Welcome to a new episode of the CIRAN podcast, reconciling two societal needs, resource extraction and nature conservation. We are Anita Stein and
Luís Rosendo.
And together with our invited experts, we are exploring how Europe balances resource extraction and nature conservation during the energy and environmental transitions. CIRAN is more than a podcast. It's a project funded by the European Union.
Today, our focus is all about the almost universal argument used by local communities, known as NIMBY, not in my backyard. And to help us understand what NIMBY means in real life, we have with us Elisabeth Gammelsæter, an economist with a background from the Ministry of Trade and Industry, former Secretary General of Norwegian Mineral Industry, now an advisor at Sweco, and also an author. She also knows the role of a local politician through her involvement in the Oslo Labour Party on the city district level.
Elisabeth is also the author of the book Not in My Neighborhood, Why NIMBY Cases Challenge Norwegian Democracy, that was published in Norway in 2022, and then republished this year in English edition with a foreword by the distinct US NIMBY scholar Patrick F. Fox. Together we will delve into Elisabeth's book and why, in her opinion, NIMBY is eroding democracy.
Well, thank you so much, Elisabeth. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. And if you allow me, I will start by the first question.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. You have an eclectic professional life, both on private and public sides. And what makes you write about NIMBY, and why do you consider it a challenge to democracy?
It's the first time I've heard that I've been called eclectic, because I have just chosen the opportunities that come my way. But I suppose if that means mixing different elements from here and there, and then yes, it's true. I have been inspired from many sides, and I'm motivated by learning new things. And I've chosen maybe the untypical road. So if that means I'm eclectic, so be it. Back to the why do I write about NIMBY? When I was in the mining industry, everybody was talking about NIMBY. I first heard about this in a European meeting about aggregate scoring in Portugal, actually, in 1998. And I wrote about this in a paper about how quarries can be perceived as good neighbors in 2003. Fast forward to 2019, I was invited into a Norwegian governmental expert committee on dangerous waste, and it became my task to enlighten this group on NIMBYism. So I wrote a 12 pages long note, and this was sifted down to 3 sentences in the final report, which was perfect for that process. But this 12 pages note was to become the core of the book that I later created. And after that, I have always had my special NIMBY ears and NIMBY glasses on, and I have picked up any discussion which was relevant for my book, and it has just never stopped. I could have written 3 volumes of new cases, obviously, since the learnings are similar, and since each case, quite frankly, was a lot of work. I have not. I am now more focused on spreading the findings and discussing the results. Also, I think if it's part of the official story saying, oh, that's just NIMBYism, without trying to understand the whys and the hows, you are creating a split between us and them, which I discourage. Being a curious person, I became more and more focused on trying to find out how we deal with NIMBYism and what we can learn from these experiences.
But why do you consider it a challenge to democracy?
Well, a challenge to democracy is because if we call each other idiots because we have a different view, then how are we get people to want to become politicians and to front unpopular cases? I think that's something that will make it harder for people to want to stand in these roles. And I've seen that through my work also. I talked to a guy. I called back. I met the person in debate. I called him back 2 years later, and he said, "Well, I'm sorry. I quit my job. I live in this community. My kids are going to school. I couldn't, and I got so much opposition. So I believed in the project, but it was too much."
Okay, thanks. Thanks for this introduction. So I understand that the English edition of your book has actually just been published, and there has been a foreword by the US NIMBY scholar Patrick Fox. So I'd be curious to understand why you decided to share your perspectives with an international audience, and also which particular lens Patrick Fox is adding to the book with the introduction.
Thank you. One of my findings is that similar mechanisms are relevant everywhere and in all types of cases. And I was in touch with Mr. Fox before the Norwegian version was published. I referred to his findings in my book. He also shared some statistics which I found useful. And he's had a long career in the US, in Canada, and in the UK. And I thought that if he finds my results relevant, there's a chance that Norwegian findings can in fact be relevant to the world. Norway does have some unique stories to tell. We established the first Ministry of the Environment in the world in 1972, partly based on the experiences from the Alta case, which I write about. While our experiences take place in a beautiful Norwegian landscape and also holds important resources, the success factors and lessons learned may give advice to projects elsewhere. Patrick says that NIMBYism is as relevant in Bergen as in Boston, where he is situated. We agree that it's only natural to stand up to defend your own neighborhood. Patrick also says that NIMBYism is based on emotions like fear and identity, and if you are unprepared, even beneficial projects will fail. He also agrees with me that while we strive for community harmony and perfection, we must sometimes accept complexity and compromise. Patrick is an experienced craftsman, and I have enjoyed picking up some tricks of the trade from him.
You also argue on your book that the Norwegian NIMBYsm can threaten European sovereignty. Can you unpack this link you do, and how local vetoes, for instance, in a non-EU country like Norway, can jump to the EU energy agenda and industrial strategy?
We just had a recent parliamentary election in Norway early in September this year. And the re-elected prime minister, he states very clearly that the EEA agreement, which secures Norwegian access to the internal market, and maintaining a constructive cooperation with the EU is a non-negotiable bottom line for cooperation with other political parties in Norway. So we want a close connection to Europe. Let me elaborate why Norwegian NIMBYism is relevant for Europe. First of all, Norway has mineral resources which are important for Europe. Norway is generally under-prospected. It's people have looked less here than in other places, and we have some quite interesting mineral resources in the ground. We have production and potential for quite a few of the minerals that are on the EU list for strategic minerals. We have the Fens field in Telemark, which is Europe's largest rare earth elements deposit. We are a large producer of titanium dioxide and other industry minerals. And we are the only European country which has made export of aggregates into a success story, because we have high quality rock located on the coastline. So that's the mineral side of it. Energy-wise, the EU looks to Norway as an important producer, but for oil and gas, there are other issues than NIMBYism, which are more central. There are a few neighbors in the North Sea, but of course there are environmental concerns. But when it comes to renewable energy, I do write about water power, dam projects, power lines, also about wind turbine plants. Norway has strengthened our position in the European energy market since Russian gas became, should we say, politically more challenging.
Yeah, as you just mentioned, your book is covering really a broad spectrum of different case studies. In your perspective, could you explain a bit what is usually triggering strong local opposition to those projects? And also, in your opinion, where do you think that officials have been handling things particularly well?
I think that local identity is a common trait. If you have a strong emotional tie to a place because you live there, or maybe your grandparents lived there, your cottage is there, or you like hiking in the area, that means that this place matters to you personally. And then you're likely to feel that it's unfair, that you should carry the burden on behalf of society. One of the translations of NIMBY that I have made myself, and a working title of the book was "Not Where It Bothers Me." Why should I endure the noise and the dust? Why don't we put the quarry or the mine in the next valley? And there's a term called solastalgia, which means longing for the landscape as it was. Also, any change is scary, especially if it's the big bad industry which is bringing on the change. So to handle things well, I would at this point say openness, transparency, respect for different perspectives, and from the authorities, good guidance and advice on what it takes in order to be allowed to start. And I happen to believe that local knowledge and involving skeptical people can make projects better for the local community. That does not happen by itself, because developers will naturally look for the cheaper solutions.
Yes, indeed, makes all the sense. Regarding CIRAN's whole work, which is on balancing two legitimate goals, meaning the safeguarding protected areas and securing critical raw materials for the green transition, in your view, why do the debates between environmental protection and mining needs often turn so unproductive?
Well, we are talking about real dilemmas here. Norway has signed up to protect 30% of our area on sea and land. That's a lot, but it's important. It was recently in the Norwegian news that Norway at present is the European country which converts most nature into developed areas in Europe per citizen. That's a competition we are not proud to win. Norwegians love the outdoor life, and we welcome tourists to our beautiful landscape. and that in itself can mean a wear and tear on the landscape. Also, I think quite a few of us have come to the realization that nature has a value in itself. That's nature on one side, but then on the other side, on the same time, we need to maintain and develop modern society. And sometimes that does mean using area. Sometimes it also means using undisturbed nature for challenging measures, such as mines and industry, measures which have negative local effects, plus you risk losing your view. And maybe your neighbor gets compensated and you don't. And maybe the official truth of the village becomes that in this place we agree on being against the project. Maybe you make your living out of selling products or services locally, and maybe you don't want to risk your local reputation, even if you secretly are happy about the opportunities, or the other way around. There is also not a guarantee to do it right as a developer. I know about projects that have been under establishment for close to 20 years and that still remain to be built, even though all permits are in place. And these people were early in being inclusive, and their opponents honor the respect the director has met them with. Nevertheless, they still have demonstrations against their project close to 20 years later. So you need to be very, very, patient. And may I read a central paragraph from my book? It's quite short. It's from the part where I describe NIMBY as a phenomenon. It's page 163 in the English edition, and it goes like this, quote, "A main point of view from my side is that developers who are planning unpopular projects should take communication very seriously throughout the process. This means that they should carefully survey stakeholders. They should focus on facts and not give in to the temptation to get emotional. They should strive to understand and show empathy related to how it feels to be affected. They should be able to weather the storm. They should expect to be opposed and to be treated like an idiot. Not least, it will most likely be claimed that they emphasize on profit over everything else. They should listen carefully to the input received. They should even be prepared to change their way of thinking along the way or their approach to the problem." End of quote. So all in all, my advice is to grow a thick skin.
Very useful advice, I think. So yeah, we are seeing nowadays that social media is very powerful in accelerating polarization in society. So I'd also like to ask you how you see the role of this growing online sphere that is everywhere around us, and also which role you think that disinformation can play in all these processes, and eventually how this can legitimate also local fears.
My experience is it can get bad. I have a picture which I use for my book presentation, which I call the chapter which was never published. And this is also mentioned shortly in the English version of the book. It's a chapter about an urban development project, which was presented as being very bad for the town before it was built, but the feelings changed after it was built. People thought it was good, and that the disadvantages they were perceived as having been exaggerated earlier. The opponent was famous for fronting the opposition, but I think it became very hard on them when the project became a success. So they first answered my questions, but when they saw the text, they redecided against it. I promised everyone to own their own story, but there is the right for a simultaneous reply, and then they saw that to this the developer commented so and so, etc. And I tried rewriting this chapter, but at one point I decided to let it go. But I keep this anonymous reminder so that we should not forget that there are real people involved with real feelings, and that we should have respect for different perspectives. I have defended mining projects, and it's my job as a consultant to give advice to developers. Developers, as I said before, often prefer the less expensive route, and that is natural. However, we must remember that projects can become better for the local community with local perspectives and knowledge. And that we should plan so that people who have been on different sides of challenging cases still can meet at the local shop or the post office or the cafe after the decision has been made and you have a yes or no, that they can look into each other's eyes and wish each other a nice weekend. We should not divide into winners and losers. We are in this together. In 1997, the town where I grew up, Trondheim, built a new ski jump area for the Skiing World Cup. And the event was a great success, but they removed my secret mushroom area. They dug it all up, and I was quite upset. So I have also taken the opposition viewpoint. If we sit each behind our PCs and we call each other idiots, I worry for the local communities and whether we will get anybody to want to become local politicians or to take the unpopular but necessary decisions, because our society is based on trust, and we want even those who disagreed with the decision to respect its outcome. I may be lost this time, but next time I may win. Yeah, I really want to keep the democratic frame.
And one other topic on this Europe process for critical raw materials is relating with permitting speed. From your cases in your book, when does moving fast backfire?
I can think of at least two things. For every fast lane, when you drive on the motorway, there's a slow lane. With limited resources, that means that some cases may take even longer. So that's the one side. Also, I mentioned that we would like those who disagree to respect the decisions. I have an interview in my book with the former Secretary General of the Norwegian chapter of the environmentalist group Friends of the Earth. And I tell a story about when we met at the consultation meeting in the process towards a mineral strategy for Norway back in, I think, 2013. And she said the following, and I like to retell this to my most impatient customers. This is the Norwegian democracy. Get used to it. Because while processes do take too long, because we do need increased predictability, and processes today open up for rematches, which is not productive. But I still advocate that they should take long enough to be respected. And the CRMA Act promises 2 years, but the cases should be well prepared. They should be socially and environmentally acceptable. But this is exactly what takes time, and understanding may sometimes need a ripening period.
Okay, yeah, I think we are already reaching the end of our podcast today. But perhaps one final question. So you have been mentioning the advice that you would be giving to project developers. And then you also mentioned the importance of transparency and good communication with locals. But are there any other key recommendations that you would be able to give to decision makers that are involved in the NIMBY topic?
Yes. Can I, if you have a few more minutes, can I start by describing some aspects of the Norwegian situation related to mines? Because the two controversies that are most inflamed in Norway today is what to do with surplus minerals on the one side, deposition practices, and how to mine or carry out other challenging measures in areas where our indigenous people, the Sami, have reindeer herding rights. It's industry versus environmentalists and or Sami activists. And now both these issues have been or is going through the Norwegian judiciary court systems. And there are even cases which have both these challenges on the same time. And I write about both aspects in my book. These are challenging questions, and I think it's fair sometimes to agree to disagree upon the right way forward. Anyway, coming back to your question about learning points, for projects in Sami areas, I would definitely look at sharing of benefits. If you can make a reindeer herder believe that the project can help them in maintaining the opportunity for future herding for generations to come, then you may have a case, but we are not there yet. We need to build trust on both sides. And this was why I wanted to explain about the Norwegian issues. But to be more general, I discussed the question of how to approach these cases with an informer of the book. I talked to him again last week, and he said, and I tend to agree, that if we can agree on what are the facts, then maybe it would be easier to reach a common understanding, to communicate honestly, to put as much weight on listening as on talking, to not make assumptions what other people think, to base communication on knowledge, and to look for the truth are all good principles for communication. NIMBYism can at least be divided into two. It's the measures you don't want here, but that you understand are necessary to put somewhere. And then there's the measures that you don't want to happen anywhere. For example, Norway stopped keeping animals in cages for making fur coats, as an example. And I think I advocate engagement, but I think we should. I strongly think that we should limit ourselves to democratic instruments. If not, I really don't know where we will end up. And I just know it's not going to be a good place. I've already mentioned that I believe that input from opponents can make projects better. And again, you can do everything right and still not get your project through. Upon thinking through these questions 3 years later, I realized that since the Norwegian version was published in 2022, the world has become much more polarized. I am, however, not willing to let my idea of a democratic framework let go, because these principles are even more important to hold on in my view. But to end up, I think that just generally trustworthiness and to behave decently, that's the short version, and then there's a longer version which is available in the book.
Well, thank you so much for your insights.
This episode was brought to you by CIRAN. CIRAN is an EU-funded project that is investigating how to balance resource extraction and nature conservation.